set, but Alberta ain't ready to kneel just yet. They chose their king, their power was met, but we don't answer to Ottawa yet. No crown gave us what we've earned, just dirt and fire and lessons learned. Now the ground it shakes, the steel it groans, and Alberta walks alone. We ride sovereign steel through fire, through frost. We ain't the last, we're the line they lost. Alberta stands, never on its knees. A nation born in the forge of the free. From the rigs to the rails, the crops to the code, we lit their streets, we bore their load. They laughed at pride, they mocked the West, but freedom don't die, it just waits for the test. The cowboys ride, the farmers rise, 5 million strong under open skies. No leash, no lie, no foreign throne. This land is steel and it stands alone. We ride sovereign steel through fire, through frost. We ain't the last, we're the line they lost. Alberta stands, never on its knees. A nation born in the forge of the free.
Welcome. It's 7-Eleven, and it's the Daily Summary with Bruce Scholl. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to have you here, excited to be here. What an extraordinary time to be alive, and I have an extraordinary guest joining us. You're going to love this episode. We are going to dig deep into the food category tonight, so make sure to turn up that dial. Make sure to share this out, get some more eyeballs on this information, and share this out to your friends, family, and social networks. You know what to do. Get it out there so we can wake up more people. So thanks very much for being here. Like I said, I'm excited to be here because we are living through this extraordinary time. And I want to get into that here very shortly. But before I do, I always want to say thank you. Thank you to the circle of friends. Thank you to my friends and family in regard to the last 4 or 5 years. Really has refined and shaped who Unscrew the News is and Bruce Scholl. So thank you so much for being here. I also want to say that I'm not your investment advisor, but I do suggest holding gold and silver, a local business here in Calgary, serving all of Canada, nuggetstacker.com. Go right through my website at unscrewthenews.com. Click on the link to get a bit of a discount, and you can sign yourself up for a monthly gold and silver subscription. This is, like I say, extraordinary times. Make sure to hold some gold and silver and protect your family's future. 1-866-644-2121, nuggetstacker.com. All right, we're going to get into unscrewing some news here today. I'm coming to you, though, from the heart of the battle-ready nation of Alberta. We bring you truth and optimism. Our goal is to break free from the media and the globalist mind control. It is November 30th, 2025, the last day of the second last month of 2025. Can you believe how fast it's gone? Anyway, episode number 228. I have Sylvain Charlebois, the food professor, joining me. And I'll give you a little bit of a background on Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, a visiting scholar at McGill University. He runs a top food-rated the Food Professor podcast and analyzes Canadian food systems through an economic and policy lens. His activity critiques grocer practices like overcharging on meat, advocates for transparency in lab-grown proteins, and exposes interprovincial trade barriers that stifle national growth. With his high engagement posts and blending consumer advocacy, the geopolitical food trade insights, he fosters discussions on affordability and amid rising prices. I'm excited to have him. We've been talking for a little bit when the cloned meat story came out. He sort of broke that, I believe. And I wanted to have him on here to discuss what was going on. So welcome, Sylvain Charlebois. It is a pleasure to have you, sir.
Well, thank you for having me, Bruce.
Very exciting to have you. I wanted to have you on, like I said, in regard to the clone meat story that came out, because it obviously shook Canadians. I mean, you and I both know that they don't speak up for a lot of things, but they certainly spoke up when they read about clone meats going into their grocery store.
Absolutely. I don't think it was Health Canada's intent to inform the public at all. So back in October, I got a phone call from a good friend of mine. He happens to be the CEO of a major, the largest hog producer, organic hog producer in the world. Actually, he's Canadian.
Yeah.
And he was very, as you can imagine, he was very concerned about what was going on here. So he did meet with the people at Health Canada, and he was informed that not only that they were going to consider offsprings of cloned meat as being non-novel, so you could actually commercialize the meat coming from these animals, no problem. It wouldn't be labeled. But what was worse, in my view, is that Health Canada did not intend to send out a press release informing the media about anything, really. And that's when I really started to be concerned. And so instead of seeing Health Canada writing a press release, I did it for them by writing an op-ed. That was back in at the end of October, actually about a month ago. And it went viral. I mean, because I knew that even though the science is pretty clear, risks are pretty minimal when it comes to cloning and the science behind all that. There shouldn't be any concern, but I know for a fact that a lot of people are concerned about cloning. They don't find cloning as an appetizing concept, of course.
Yes.
And so obviously I knew something was up, and basically decided to let Canadians know, and Canadians actually weren't impressed at all. And my understanding is that after my op-ed and after many media interviews, the Minister of Health actually received over 5,000 letters from Canadians basically asking you to stop or to pause, which is exactly what they did a couple of weeks ago. Health Canada decided to pause, but again, no press release. Just an announcement on their website. Again, not to inform or to install fear. Essentially, it's the fear to basically get people to fear. Essentially, and to me, that's so 1990 or 2000. It's not 2025. In 2025, we're just in a different place. People expect something very, very different.
Do you mean transparency as far as the government's concerned, or as far as we should be okay with cloned meat? I do want to get into this. I want to ask you about why you wrote the op-ed to begin with, but do you mind answering that question?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually in favor of a mandatory labeling policy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important, and but not for the reasons you think. I mean, yes, absolutely. Transparency is critical, and consumers need to know, but to me, it goes way beyond that. So yes, the right to know is very important. But here's the thing, Bruce. Over the years, we've seen agriculture, the agri-food sector, using new technologies to become more efficient, to increase yields. And I'm thinking about genetic engineering, and these things have been wonderful for agriculture in general. I mean, agriculture is way more efficient due to the adoption of many of these technical advancements. But I think what's happening right now is that consumers are starting to ask questions about these technological investments, saying, well, if the industry is getting more efficient, cutting costs. What's in it for us
Right.
as we're paying more for food?
Right.
And that's why the social contract between consumers, and the industry is starting to be questioned a little bit, as far
Yeah.
as I'm concerned. So I'll give you a very simple example, Bruce. If I offer you two pieces of meat, both are properly labeled, one is clone, one is not, at the same price,
Yeah.
which one would you choose?
I want the God-made one.
That's right. And most people would. I
Yeah.
mean, the odd person would probably go for a clone. But if the clone meat is 30-40% cheaper, which one would you pick?
I'd still go with God's plan.
But I would say that probably, I would
Yeah.
argue that some people,
For
not
sure.
all people, but some people would consider the clone option. And frankly, beef prices are just out of whack. I mean, it's just very difficult for a lot of people to afford beef right now. And so that's why I think, to me, if you don't clarify rules at retail, allowing consumers to befriend some of these technologies, you do two things. You actually allow that information void to be occupied by interest groups that actually will hurt farmers, that will
Mhm.
actually make farmers look bad. Like the Franken food episode
Yes.
with genetic engineering. You remember? I mean,
Yes.
really, farmers are trusted, farming less and less so. So farmers are trusted, but practices are becoming more and more scrutinized. And so that's one thing that really is changing right now. But most importantly, I think it's because of food inflation. I do believe that people are starting to look at these things very differently. And the other thing, of course, is like allow people to understand what's going on out there by befriending the technology. Here are the benefits of why we're doing things. And right now, I don't think consumers actually see any benefits for them.
No. Well, I want to get into this a bit more because you mentioned food prices. Obviously, that is a big deal. Um, but it's the trust factor, I think, that it really makes people question. I mean, we've already been down this road for let's just say that it started 5 years ago, that people started to really question that
The
their
science.
governments and
Yep.
science and even medicine, right? Um, I think it's warranted as far as I'm concerned, the questioning, and I think that people are becoming wiser because they're realizing that they have to be in charge of their own health and their choices. So
Well, I mean, I must say, Bruce, I kind of like what's happening right now, because as
yeah,
soon as I see more consumers engage, it will actually make food systems stronger. So this is great. I actually do, even though that I won't get a Christmas card from Health Canada this year, I don't care. It's
yeah.
actually a good thing, to be honest.
Okay, I want
And
to ask you. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
but I do think that really it boils down to yes, consumer trust is very important, but it also boils down to understanding what is going on. And
Mhm.
a few years ago, I went to Monsanto before it got bought out by Bayer.
Bear, yeah.
In 2014, wrote a case on Monsanto with my good friend Rene Van Acker, who's now the president of the University of Guelph. And we met the president of Monsanto, and Monsanto was just, I mean, it was actually the most hated company in the world before it was bought. And we asked him, why didn't you engage with consumers, explain to them what you were doing as a company? And his response was, I always going to remember this.
Mhm.
Science was on our side. He said science was on our side. Well, as a scientist, I can tell you, Bruce, science doesn't have a side
Right,
ever. And science is not an absolute. And this is the one thing that I think during COVID got rubbed people the wrong way, because
right.
we actually had politicians going on television every single day. The science is telling you or me to do this and that
Or
and
it's
that.
settled.
That's right. And frankly, it just portrayed science in a way that it basically made clear rules, and rules should last forever.
Right.
That's not how science works. Science actually, policy support on science should change on a regular basis, because science is not an absolute. And that's probably the one thing that people now understand that
Yes,
they didn't get during COVID. And now we're paying for it.
we are. Okay, I want to ask you, going back to the op-ed that you wrote, was the op-ed meant to expose the lack of transparency on Health Canada, or were you just as a consumer yourself, and the food professor,
Yeah.
just interested in their process and their thinking around not talking about labeling? What was your goal? Because obviously what ended up happening, it blew up, and now you're not friends with Health Canada anymore. So
But
your friends off, but
what I what I really liked about this episode is that legacy media recognized that they knew nothing.
mm,
I mean, they just didn't know any. I knew what was going on. They didn't, but they played along.
mm,
So I write the op-ed for Post Media, it catches on, people ask questions, and then all of a sudden I get questions from CTV News Global. They played along, which I think was it was wonderful, to be honest. And I know there's lots of criticism around legacy media.
yes, sir.
They're doing their best. I mean, there's been lots of cuts in recently, so they can't cover everything.
Mm,
And now I felt that they they looked around, they looked on X, they looked at op-eds and said, oh, maybe the food professor has something here. And we did, and it has happened on several occasions over the years where legacy media just didn't have the bandwidth to cover some of these issues. We did it for them, and they actually just played along. They basically caught up. And so that's why it kind of worked, and that's why everything's on pause now.
I don't like the word pause, by the way. I think that I don't think Canadians like the word
Well,
pause.
it's not
either.
my word, it's their word. So that's the exact word they use on their website. Pause. Yeah.
I
But
know
I
it's the
agree
word
with
that
you,
they
Bruce.
use. Yeah.
I know why you don't like it. I don't like it either. Because I suspect that they'll probably come up with something different. But I do think there was a bit of an awakening here, and we saw that in Alberta this week with
Yes.
with the UCP basically rallying. I don't know what the resolution actually said, but it's a clear statement saying, you know what, be careful here. This is a precious thing, and we have very important, delicate sectors to protect, like beef and pork. And if you basically compromise the integrity of these sectors, that's not going to be good for brand equity. That's not going to be good for the value of the sector over time in the eyes of consumers.
Hmm. Can I pose something to you? And this might sound a bit conspiratorial. I do want to read out this policy for you, because I was there and participated in the policies in regard to the UCP. But have you ever heard the phrase that he who controls the food controls the people?
Many times. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
Kissinger actually said that. I believe he was the first to say that.
so if you go down that road, if you have that in the back of your mind, and if you were to grow lab meat or clone meat, it could potentially, and this is how I look at it, and maybe other Albertans and maybe other Canadians see it this way, is that you could potentially dismantle farming, ranching, and normal cattle production. Let's just use cattle as one example. So, do you think that there's any merit to that fear?
Not really. I mean, when you think of, both technologies, let's start with cloning. The reason
Yeah.
why you want to clone an animal is because you
Yeah.
want the same exact animal again with the same DNA.
Because
You're still raising
it was,
an animal.
yeah, because it was it was the perfect animal, let's say.
Yeah.
Like it was a 10 out of 10.
The genesis of the genetic genesis is different, but you're still raising an animal. It's the
Okay,
same.
so
It's the same for, well, lab grown meat is different because
lab
you
grown meat,
basic
yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. But do you want
yeah,
to
it's
tell us
very
about
different,
clone?
but
Yeah.
I can see why people would think that, but I'd say, you know, Singapore is a city state, and they've decided a few years ago that 30% of the food they actually eat in the city state would be produced locally
Hmm.
with zero farmland. Like
Oh,
they just don't have space.
oh, I see. Okay.
I don't know if you've been to Singapore, but
No, never.
they don't have space. So
Yeah.
how do you produce food with no farmland? Well, you use labs, and that's exactly what they're doing
Really?
with chicken. Yeah, they're producing chicken, lab grown chicken, and they've been selling it for a few years now. I think it's 3 years now, and so I think there's a purpose for some of the technologies. The thing we need to be careful with, and this is something that I often see as being forgotten, is that food is culture, food is traditions. I mean,
Hmm.
food is part of, like, if you look at livestock, for example, livestock is part of a very, very delicate and complex natural environmental ecosystem. I mean, you just can't say, I'm going to take this out because I'm going to make some meat in a lab, and
Right.
people will be happy. It just doesn't work that way.
So we're not at Star Trek. You can't just
No, no,
you can,
I don't think so. But again, I'm a big fan of food innovation. Like, I
yeah.
really just enjoy innovation. Why I love innovation? Because if by mastering a very strong, innovative agenda, you allow the market to grow. You allow the agri-food sector to grow. Without innovation, you can't grow. So,
Hmm.
for example, the plant-based invasion that happened 6 years ago, I know a lot of ranchers, especially where you are in Calgary, they were very upset. I remember giving a talk to 700 ranchers in Red Deer, Alberta. They were all with their cowboy hats, and I
Yeah.
basically was telling them plant-based products are actually good for you, and in terms of economically and financially, and they didn't believe it. What I was saying basically is that the stomach share era is over. It's not, this is not about a zero sum game anymore. Food is not a zero sum game anymore. It used to be, but not anymore. Consumers are looking for value. Yes, they'll be tempted. Some people will be tempted by lentils and chickpeas. And Murad Al Kahib is the CEO of AGT, and he's doing wonderful things out of Saskatchewan, supporting farmers from Alberta, from Saskatchewan, Manitoba, growing some of these pulses to be exported all over the world. There's
Yeah.
actually a market for vegetable protein, but at the same time, um, you kind of value the meat trifecta, which is beef, pork, and chicken, which really became boring for a while, but now people are excited. I actually even wrote a book about proteins a few years ago because people are talking about protein and they're excited about protein, including steaks and pork and bacon and chicken. And so you kind of see animal proteins a little differently, and you can value them. You can basically say, listen, these are the reasons why you're eating beef. You may have
Yeah.
forgotten that, but these are the reasons. And you can actually showcase some of these virtues much more easily now.
Interesting.
That's
That's
how I see it anyways.
yeah.
And that's why I'm a big fan of innovation. And I wouldn't say, so, like, for lab grown meat, is the technology interesting? Yes. Is there a future for lab grown meat? I don't think so.
Can
Uh,
you? Sorry to interrupt you,
yeah,
and I want to talk about lab grown meat, but I really want people to understand the process of clone meat because there is a lot of confusion around
yeah.
it, and that was why I think that people push back because they really didn't understand, and maybe it's not as bad as what our minds are thinking. So,
But
can you tell
here's
us
the
the
thing,
process?
Bruce.
Yeah.
There's a difference between people didn't understand and didn't want to understand,
Right. Yeah.
and the latter is something we need to respect.
Yes.
If a consumer doesn't want to understand, that is okay. Okay. I see a lot of farmers out there saying, "Oh, we need to educate consumers about what we do, and we do hard work." Consumers know that farmers are hard workers and they do a lot of work, but we shouldn't expect consumers to really understand farming. I mean, do farmers understand like your job, Bruce? What
No,
you do
probably not.
for a living? They don't. And so we should expect the same with clone meat. I mean, essentially, why would you clone an animal? That's because you want the same animal, because that one animal you actually had in your herd cost you less to feed, produced like the perfect ribs, the perfect marbling for steak, and etc. So you want that animal again. It is expensive to clone animals, and frankly, good breeders out there wouldn't need cloning at all.
Right.
Really, if you're a good breeder, you don't. But if you're not, you've had some shortfalls. You have been able to succeed with and optimize your genetic pool with artificial insemination. Well, cloning could be an interesting avenue for you. And so that's cloning is like artificial insemination, but you're basically recreating the same animal by taking cells from the animal you want and inserting those cells, that DNA, into an egg, and then you impregnate a female, and they'll basically give birth to a clone animal. That's basically how it works.
I see.
Now, lab grown meat, you still need a live animal. So through a biopsy, you take cells from an animal, and then you take those cells and you put those cells into a bioreactor, and you feed those cells with amino acids and other nutrients to multiply those cells. So once you actually extract cells through a biopsy from an animal, you don't need an animal anymore, and you're not killing anything. You're basically just recreating cells in a bioreactor in the lab setting. So some advantages. The big one to me is biosecurity. You don't have to worry about avian flu anymore. That's a major one. That's a big one. We had to put down over 60 million birds so far this year. That's a lot of birds. That's a lot of money. In a lab setting, you control everything. You control food safety, you control biosecurity risk, everything. Now, is it appetizing as a concept? Probably not. Like a lot of people are saying, no, I want to eat chicken. I don't want to eat something that came out of a lab. And I can understand that. But the purpose is different. And right now, scaling up lab grown production is very difficult and very costly. And so the first lab grown piece of meat that was actually eaten in front of a camera was back in 2013. That was 12 years ago. And that piece of meat, I think, cost almost $400,000 US to make.
Oh, yeah.
And it was 140 grams. It was very small. Now, today, you can actually make that same piece of meat for maybe about $10 US. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but is there a market for that? Well, most people are thinking no right now, because you're seeing, I mean, Alberta, if Alberta is to go ahead with a policy and mandatory labeling, I mean, they're not the first one. We've seen Texas do the same thing, Florida do the same thing in the US. I believe there are 2 other states as well. In Europe, you have Italy going after that technology. As soon as you label, I mean, as soon as you let the market decide if this technology has market currency, I don't think it's going to get much attention. That's the thing. And and investors know that. Right.
So they, based on market, in a free market, there might not be investors because they realize that there may not be a market for that product. Is that what you're saying?
That's how money works. Follow the money. I mean,
follow the money.
Like, would you invest in lab grown in a lab grown facility, not knowing how the policy framework will look like and whether or not consumers will want it? Look at genetically modified salmon.
Yeah.
The genetically modified salmon was a disaster in Canada. It was actually created in in PAI, and they actually crossed different species to come up with this genetically modified salmon, which costs 60% less to make. So a salmon will take you typically about 3 years to get to maturity. The genetically engineered salmon took 18 months.
Hmm.
Okay.
And,
So
and it was a
people
real
thought,
salmon. It
wow.
wasn't
Right.
lab grown or anything like that.
No,
It was
it's
just
it's just
yeah.
it was a genetic engineered salmon. So
Hmm.
crossing. So we actually grow a lot of GMOs in Calgary or in Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba. The difference between a genetic engineered seed or a species versus what's natural, because there's genetic engineered or editing all the time in nature.
Right.
The difference is that you're basically crossing genes that wouldn't cross normally in nature.
Hmm.
And so they created this salmon, which I thought was great. But all of a sudden, you saw grocers banning the product because it wasn't going to be labeled. And they said, you know what? If it's not going to be labeled, I don't want it, because I don't want that product into my seafood counter and contaminate my best-selling. I mean, they have two best sellers at the grocery store: shrimps and salmon.
Hmm.
And if people are saying, you know what, if it's not labeled, I'm not going to buy salmon because I don't know which one is genetically modified, that's a problem.
So
But
then
like
they
I
just
said,
turned off the salmon. Yeah.
I'm going back to my first premise, my first example with the clone meat. If genetic engineered salmon is costing you 60% less to make, why wouldn't you actually give a discount to consumers by labeling it and selling it 60% off?
Right. Right.
So that was the problem. And the reason why it never happened is that Metro, Sobeys, Walmart, Loblaw did not want to compromise on margins. They make a lot of money. Why the hell would they give you and I a good deal
Right.
either at the meat counter or at the seafood counter? Its margins are 40 to 50%. Why the hell would they actually reduce that?
Yeah.
That is why mandatory labeling is not working. You need governments to start pushing this, because forever they heard from groups saying, oh, we don't need to label. The science is pretty clear, and
It's
consumers are going
settled.
to,
Yeah.
science is settled. Yeah. And right now, today, when you walk into a grocery store, 75%, everything that's processed, 75% has actually at least one bioengineered ingredient, at least one. And
Yeah.
nobody knows because it's not labeled.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Do you mind if I just read this out? So this is a policy that we just put into place at the
That you
UCP
voted on.
AGM. Yeah. The rationale is the lab-grown meat is being developed using stem cells and is being touted for its potential for being more sustainable, humane, and potentially healthier than traditional meat production. Long-term health effects of consumption of lab-grown meat or other food products are not currently known. In order to ensure safety and transparency, the UCP government should advocate to ensure that all meat or any other products produced in a lab must be labeled as such with clear details as to package contents. That was the policy.
Okay. So there was no mention of cloning.
Well, what they were going to do, because I think that they wanted to add cloned to it. So they were just going to say lab grown meat / cloned. So they always will go through after the policy's done, and
Right.
they'll obviously work it through and change anything that needs to be changed.
Yeah, so the
as far as
policy is
that's
very
concerned.
targeted to towards lab grown, or
Mhm.
and I call it cellular agriculture, basically.
Yeah.
I can understand that, but like I said, Alberta's not setting a precedent here.
Right.
It's been
It's nothing
done
new,
before
really. Yeah.
by a few states and by European countries, and frankly, I don't know why it's taken so long. I mean,
Mm.
Health Canada hasn't even started to look into lab grown meat. It's bizarre.
Hmm.
And so this is I do believe that Quebec will follow suit, Ontario will follow suit,
Mhm.
I'm encouraging provinces to actually do the same as Alberta. I think it's important.
Right. It's important to make sure that there's transparency and that it's out in the open. So you
But
mentioned, and I want to go
eventually, if lab grown meat costs you half to make, I want a deal.
right. I
But you
mean,
can't have a deal without labels.
that's you can't have it unless you actually know what you're getting. So the transparency has to be there first.
And
Right?
then, of course, lab grown meat could actually cost you different. It could taste different.
Yeah.
And people actually will want to reward farmers. They want to connect with the land, and they would be willing to pay a little extra.
Right.
That's the thing. And frankly, because let's face it, the difference between clone meat and regular meat is nil. There's just no difference. You wouldn't even know the difference.
Right.
With lab grown, you can do a lot of things with lab grown. Like you can actually, create a pumpkin spice flavored ribeye steak.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, if you really want to push the envelope here on innovation, you can do that, but people don't want that. I mean, they just want natural stuff, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So going to finish off on clone meats, if you don't mind, you had mentioned that they potentially could be cloning an animal that they wanted to clone. Let's say the 10 out of 10 animal that they really wanted to have in their herd,
Yep.
but they wouldn't necessarily have to if that animal now that has been cloned has a baby naturally after that. Do you remember talking about that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I
Do you
mean,
mind expanding? Yeah.
yeah. So basically, what Health Canada wanted to do was to actually allow the commercialization of meat coming from offsprings of clone animals.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a step. It's a step further, basically, not clone animals per se.
Right.
But I think this whole episode to me is quite telling. I think because of social media, and frankly, legacy media just didn't cover this until we made it obvious that it needed to be covered. I think there's a shift in the balance of power. I actually do think that now consumers, social media has been around for a while, but now they know how to use it. Like they know how to use it,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was really surprised by how this thing really unfolded. And
Mm.
and again, I couldn't be happier. I really think this was a victory for consumers. And I know that you're still a little skeptical with the pause issue. I am as well. I don't think
Yeah.
but it was I mean, Health Canada, you have to understand that Health Canada is I've actually dealt with Health Canada for years, and they're a little arrogant, you know. They're very paternal in their approach,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah.
So I would say for them to actually pause, I see this as a big deal because
Well,
they probably didn't like what they saw, and they were forced to pause by the minister, who received complaints after complaints after complaints.
well, I wonder if in regard to Health Canada, I think I think they need to be taken down a peg personally, and I think that there's probably a lot of other Albertans and Canadians that think, that their arrogance is misplaced, because they are working for us. They should be advocating for Canadians and their health,
Well, the
as
first
opposed.
time I went after Health
Yeah.
Canada was in 2019 when they produced their new food guide. Do you remember that? That was in 2019.
Yes. Yes.
So they basically said, go plant-based and save the environment, blah, 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 no dairy. And so I went, okay. So, and I saw the committee. Actually, I published with 3 people on that committee of 13 dietitians and nutritionists that decided that this was the way to go. It was probably the most un-Canadian food guide I've ever seen,
Mm,
with almonds and avocados. And I mean, it was
right.
just weird. Anyways, but I went along with it. Okay, so science, nutritionally, I would say that, I mean, it was a pretty solid food guide. But the one question I asked Health Canada was, okay, so uh, will Canadians spend more money to follow that food guide versus the old one? Or is the old one more expensive?
Right.
You know what the answer was? They didn't look at it.
They didn't care.
They didn't look at the costing
Right.
of the new food guide versus the old one.
So
Can
it
you
wasn't even a
imagine?
factor. Wasn't even a
It
factor.
wasn't even a factor. This is aspirational. This is what you need to eat.
Right.
Who cares? Everyone can afford whatever.
Right.
So we did the work for them afterwards.
Yes.
And so that's the kind of approach with cannabis. Same thing with edibles. I mean, I'm against the legalization of cannabis personally, but if I've always said, if you want to legalize cannabis, do it right. And the one thing I've recommended Health Canada was, well, make edibles as easy as possible for the industry so they can actually sell to Canadians edibles, because the body is not designed to inhale drugs.
Mm.
It's designed to
Ingest.
drugs.
Right.
Because right now what you're seeing are a lot of people inhaling drugs, and that's not good for you. They've made edible rules so complicated, so costly, and they wanted that, right? They didn't want that 5-year-old going to the hospital after eating a chocolate bar. They told me that. They said, you know what? We wanted to restrict as much as possible and make it unsexy to invest in edibles because we just didn't want any trouble. And the result, 90% of edibles in the market right now are illegal, illicit edibles coming from the US or elsewhere around the world.
Oh, wow.
With no oversight.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, once you legalize cannabis, you can just basically bring in all sorts of products. I've actually ordered gummy bears from Florida through customs coming into Canada, no problem.
Right.
No oversight. So
interesting.
And that's Health Canada's arrogance, saying, I know best. I know best. Canadians are need to be protected because they don't know all the risk we need to deal with.
Well, it's all for your safety.
Yep.
I want to move. I want to move on. I want to quickly talk about beef prices. We mentioned that, and I was hoping to touch on beef prices. So we both know that prices of beef, and then we even talked about it during this, is that price of beef is high, and so you're saying innovation could potentially bring down the prices of a lab grown meat. So, but what are you seeing? Because you and I talked about it before we hit record, was in regard to the producers or sorry, I'm
Packers,
the
beef packers. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what's going on? Is it a cartel that they control the prices at this point, and Health Canada wants to keep the prices up? What are you seeing?
It's another bizarre situation, to be honest, because in the United States they're experiencing the same thing. There's just no inventory out there, both in Canada and US. Herd sizes are very small, and they're gonna be the same for a while. However, in Canada, we have seen price increases that are much more significant than in Canada, and President Trump decided to do two things. He made beef prices a political issue by allowing more beef from Brazil, from Argentina. He basically eliminated tariffs affecting food, and he's investigating packers in the U.S. National Beef, GBS, Cargill, Tyson. In Canada, Mum from Ottawa, nothing from Ottawa, not a thing. And so I'm concerned about that, because I don't think beef prices will drop anytime soon. So there's no investigation for packers. But also, the one thing that people need to know is that there is an advisory committee in Ottawa that actually sits and meets on a regular basis, but haven't met since 2015.
Wow.
And their job is to actually advise global affairs in terms of how much meat we should actually allow Canada to import from abroad through TRQs, so tariff-free beef, essentially, because you have limitations. Right now, we're importing some Australian, some New Zealand beef, some Mexican beef, but it's very limited. And so I'm wondering, and 2015, I mean, we went through the same thing in 2014. Beef prices did go up. There was no inventory. Of course, beef prices got normalized after that. But this time around, it's much more significant, and there's still nothing going on. And so I knew there was a committee that hasn't met. So I've outed them as well recently in an op-ed, and got some reactions. The Canadian Meat Council was not happy with me because their reaction was very, very bizarre, because they said, well, don't believe this op-ed. It's not true. And we have a good relationship with global affairs. And when you look at their statement, there's not one mention of the consumer, like zero. It's all about,
so again, it's arrogance.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was just like, we're a lobby group for the meat industry, and we know best, and we actually need the government, and we get along with the government. That appeared to be the most important thing for them, their relationship with the government. It wasn't about the consumer at all.
Not at all. Not at all.
The consumer, in the meantime, is struggling out there. I mean, you're basically seeing a lot of beef orphans out there. They're just looking for a good source of animal protein, but it's very expensive.
Well, I don't know about you, but personally, I like to have steaks. I like to have, good beef for my family. And what used to be, $40, $45, $50 is now $90, for that same thing. It's almost.
And you're in Alberta.
Yes.
You're close to Feedlot Alley. I mean, it's just incredible what's happening right now. And a lot of people are asking questions, and as they should.
I'm concerned. This is my concern. And I don't think it's without any consequence. I think it's real, is that the price is so much that I'm concerned that the consumer won't be able to afford it, and then the producer will then stop producing as much, or will not.
Oh, we are losing consumers forever. Absolutely. Sure. And that's really a problem. It's a problem for the industry for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. One other thing that I wanted to talk about, because it was so hot in the market, or on X and the news, and this is another producer with a huge misstep. I don't know where to go from here, but maybe the inside story in regard to Campbell's. Yeah. And I'm going to pull this up here so that we can share it, and I'm sure that my listeners or viewers have all heard about it. But in regard to Campbell's, and I think it was a vice president. Yeah.
Who's been fired since. Yep.
He has been, hey?
Yeah.
Okay, so the broadcast, a speaker identified as the Campbell's vice president and chief information security officer, Martin Bally, is heard saying, "We have shit for effing poor people. Who buys this shit?" What do you have to say? Like, what happened? What is the background story on this?
Actually, to be honest, at the beginning, I thought it was an AI generated quote.
Is that right?
Yeah, I don't think I didn't thought it was real. But so in context, this one person got fired from Campbell's, and the reason why he was fired is that he was complaining that some high executives were just bashing the company over and over again, affecting the culture of the company. And when he was meeting with his lawyer, he basically had a tape of this guy, one rant of the vice president. He actually had it on tape. And for some reason, the lawyer of the fired employee decided to go to ABC News to leak it. During the week of Thanksgiving, during Thanksgiving week in the U.S., this is really important, because these companies sell a lot of food during Thanksgiving week.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, and so I mean, the intent was to hurt the company for sure, and I think it did really. The auction price, the share price is did drop, but it's been dropping for at least a year now. I mean, most CPG companies are really struggling right now, including Campbell's.
Sorry, CBG. Sorry,
Consumer product companies,
I see.
basically. Yeah,
Okay,
it's the term that we use. So that would include Unilever, Nestle,
right.
PepsiCo, Danone. So those are major multinationals. And so we got leaked to ABC, and of course, when I saw that, I thought, "Wow, that's an incredibly incompetent executive." I mean, you shouldn't have a vice president talking like this. And by the way, he's an IT guy. It has nothing to do with production. So
Hmm.
he's within his portfolio. There's just nothing in regards to what goes into the food, but it doesn't matter for anyone else. I mean, outside,
Yeah,
when they hear VP of Campbell's, he must know stuff. He must know what's going on. And like
right.
I said, it's costing you more to feed yourself and to feed your family. And if people are actually hearing that this one company is selling subpar products with bioengineered ingredients, printed food. I mean, there was
He said 3D printed chicken in the soups.
like all sorts of stuff that made no sense, 0 sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so that's why I mean, they basically got into this PR nightmare, and people, but here's the thing, Bruce, people believed it. People believed it. And so, and people want to believe these things because, again, there's a void of information, and
Hmm.
they are seeing the food industry not working with the consumer. It's all about saving money, increasing margins, and I think people are starting to get sick of it. And that's why, I mean, I at first the VP was put on leave, and frankly, I don't think it was enough. But he was eventually fired. I believe it was on Friday.
Hmm. Okay, well, let's talk about that because we talked about it before. But trust is huge,
I
and the
don't really
lack of
use
trust.
like the word that I often use these days is not necessarily consumer trust, because everyone talks about consumer trust. I'm talking about consumer faith.
Right.
You
Right.
know, when you buy a product, you have faith in that product. You have faith in the farmer who made whatever the
Yeah.
ingredients. You have faith in the processor doing its job. You have faith in the distributor and the retailer or a restaurant operator, whatever. You have faith. And faith is blind, and it was blind for a while. You just have you don't question anything. To me, trust is a little bit more complicated because trust is based on information,
Mm.
but there's
Mm.
there's there's no information.
Right. But Health Canada, what I was going to get at was Health Canada and these other agencies and just about our country. I'm not going to talk about United States because I don't know it as well. But Health Canada is not helping their they're not helping their case
No.
by doing something like putting out clone meat and not wanting to label it. It doesn't help to instill any faith or any trust in in the process.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, this only exacerbates the issue even more. Okay, see, we were vindicated by saying that we don't trust the food systems, we don't trust the food
Yep.
companies, because look what happened with Campbell's, right? I
Yep.
mean, that's another win for not the conspiratorial, but it's another win for people that were not trusting their food process systems, right?
Yep.
The producers, the growers, the restaurants, like you say, and now this is just another feather in the cap as far as that's concerned. So how?
And I do believe that we'll see more of these things
Yeah.
in the future. Absolutely. And I think that that other companies, it could have happened to any company really.
Hmm. Hmm.
And but it happened to Campbell's. So I suspect others will. I'm sure that over the weekend, a lot of COs were having briefings with their executives. Make sure you don't get
By
taped.
the way, yeah, make sure
If you
that
go
you're
on a
not.
rant,
Yeah.
make sure you're not, and the other thing that the VP actually mentioned was that he was actually he was consuming edibles at work. Like it was just bizarre. It was just so totally bizarre. And frankly,
Okay.
I thought maybe he was actually experiencing some mental health issues,
Right.
and that's a serious issue, of course. That
Sure.
could have been but it was so insane that perhaps the guy himself was not well.
Not well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It totally could have been.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's wrap it up. Sylvain, I appreciate all of the time that you've given us, and we've gone over the majority of what I was hoping to. Was there anything else that you want to tell my viewers and Canadian, viewers in general at this point, in regard to food?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd say, I mean, remain engaged, ask questions, make the industry accountable as much as possible, and try to understand what's going on. This week we published our 16th annual Canada's Food Price Report. So that's our forecast for the next 12 months in terms of what's going to happen with food prices. But the report is actually 32 pages long. So on Thursday, most media will actually be focusing on the forecast, but I encourage people to read the rest of the report, which really has everything to do with the future of food. So we look at policy. We don't necessarily make recommendations. We will, as a group, because we have I think 25 people involved in the project. We kind of express our concerns about some of the things that we're seeing. But overall, I think it's important for people to remain engaged and ask questions as much as possible.
Okay, so obviously I'm bringing it up here so people can see it, and
Yeah,
you actually haven't published on your website the 2026 is what you're saying
it's
is
coming out on December 4th.
on
Yeah,
December 4th. Okay,
yeah,
well, 4 days from now, so that's fantastic. So
yeah.
I've got the website up here. I'll make sure to add that in for anybody that's looking for it. How else do people get in touch with you or watch you? I know I've already brought it up here, the Professor podcast. Anything else? Are you on Substack or anything like that as well?
I am on Substack. Yeah, absolutely. So I've actually started this summer. It's a lot of fun, actually. It's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, Substack is so you can look me up under Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie. Agri-Food Analytics Lab, basically Dalhousie University. You can find me there. I write a column every, I'd say, 3 days or so, and I'm on X under Food Professor, LinkedIn under Food Professor as well, and that's about it. Yeah.
Fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time tonight to come on. Oh, sorry. I'm going to show this here just for everybody to see. I'm just on your X profile, and we should be able to find you. Yeah, we've got the Apple podcast. You said that you were number 1 or number 2, did you say, on Apple Podcasts?
The number 1 Canadian management podcasts in the country. So yeah. So when we started our podcast 6 years ago, my goal was to rival Harvard, MIT, those podcasts. And so that's what we're doing. We're basically in that same group, which is nice. Yeah.
Great. I really appreciated this. This is a great conversation, and I appreciate your evidence and your research and all the work that you do. I'd love to have you back on again and talk about, I don't know whether it's food prices that we have to dig into a bit more, but
Yeah.
it sounds like you always have something else that we need to be.
There's always something on the go for sure.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
If you have one more thing that you want to say to anybody else, please go ahead, and then I'm just going to say goodbye to the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm out there. Obviously, I think a lot of people are concerned about academia in general, and I can appreciate that. I mean, most academics are left-leaning, liberals. that's our problem. That's a big problem. And so I'm very vocal about my point of views, and I do it because I think we need a balance debate on the future of food, and right now it's just not balanced at all. I mean, so just keep the faith. We'll get there.
Well, to your point, I want to end off here, but to your point, we need to be talking more than we have been, because it seems like we're so divided that you can't even talk to somebody that has a different opinion. And, I don't necessarily agree with all that you say, but I do appreciate hearing your perspective on a lot of these things. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's really important, I think, to, to continue having conversations and to find common ground. I think is very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm just going to say goodbye to the audience. If you don't mind sticking around for 15 seconds, you and I can catch up after.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for being here. If you're still watching, make sure to share this out. Like I said, get some more eyeballs on it. Get this out to your friends and family, your social media networks. Let's stay sane together, everyone. Keep your head on a swivel. This is Bruce, and I'm out of here. Thank you so much for watching Unscrew the News. I appreciate your participation in freedom in Canada. Share this information and help others to wake up. God bless.